Later that night, as Mark lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Sophie knocked softly and slipped inside. She climbed onto the bed beside him, her small frame curling against his side. "Can I tell you something?" she whispered. "Always," Mark said, wrapping an arm around her. "I know you don't have a girlfriend," Sophie began, her voice serious. "But I also know you're thinking about something big. You don't have to tell me, I get it. But whatever it is, I think you can do it." Mark felt a lump in his throat, his sister's words catching him off guard. "Thanks, Soph. That means a lot." She nodded, her eyes sleepy but wise beyond her years. "If you ever need help, just tell me, okay? I'm really good at coloring drawings." Mark chuckled, hugging her tightly. "I'll keep that in mind." As she left, Mark sat up, his thoughts racing. The Silvers, the Greys, the Resistance. It was all so much bigger than him, bigger than his family. But moments like this reminded him why he had to keep going. He wasn't just fighting for humanity's survival. He was fighting for Sophie's innocence, his parents' laughter, the quiet dinners that made everything feel normal. And as the moonlight filtered through his window, Mark felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead was uncertain, but he knew one thing for sure. His family was his reason to fight, and their love would be his guiding light through whatever came next. Mark sat on a steel platform deep within the cavern, the dim alien glow of the Silver's technology casting sharp shadows around him. Morris stood a few feet away, his arms crossed, as he stared at the pulsating silver orb hovering between them. The Silvers had called it the trial simulator, a device that would immerse them in a virtual reality so lifelike that every sensation, every fear, every loss would feel real. "I'm not gonna lie," Morris muttered, rubbing his neck. "This thing gives me bad vibes." Mark smirked. "That's probably because it's about to throw us into a doomsday scenario." Silver One stepped forward, its golden gaze steady. "This simulation will prepare you for what is coming. You will experience the stages of invasion, the psychological warfare, the desperation of leadership. You must learn, through failure, through frustration, through pain. But no worries. If you die, you will respawn in 5 minutes. You both will be spending a lot of time in the simulator." Silver One continued. "This simulator will update and adapt to new information you gain from each simulation." Morris sighed and shot a glance at Mark. "Guess there's no easy mode, huh?" Silver Two's voice was cold. "There is only reality." Without further warning, the orb split into swirling vortexes of data, wrapping around them like ribbons of liquid light. Mark barely had time to react before his consciousness was yanked into another world. A shudder rippled through the simulation. The sky above flickered, warping like static on an old television. Then, without warning, the first wave hit. An electromagnetic pulse detonated across the city, invisible but devastating. Every electronic device, phones, streetlights, car engines, died in an instant. A wave of darkness spread, punctuated by the sputtering of failing generators and the sudden halt of traffic. Mark's stomach twisted. He had seen disasters unfold on TV before, but nothing had ever felt this visceral, this suffocating. "Their EMP wave," Silver Two's voice murmured in his mind. "The first method of attack. Civilization fractures. Fear takes control." The streets erupted into chaos. People screamed, shoving one another as alarms failed and buildings darkened. Drivers slammed on their brakes, their vehicles stalled in the middle of the road. Some panicked and ran. Others stood frozen, trying in vain to restart their phones. Mark spotted a businessman in a pristine suit gripping his dead phone, shaking it like that might somehow bring it back to life. Nearby, a mother clutched her crying child, scanning the streets for answers that wouldn't come. "It's happening way too fast," Mark muttered. "No time to process," Morris agreed, eyes darting across the street. "That's the point. Chaos makes resistance harder to organize." Mark clenched his fists. "We need to find shelter. Get underground before the next wave hits." But even as he spoke, the simulation shifted again. Mark barely had time to react before the sky split open. Descending like demons from the heavens were the war droids, sleek, towering figures of metal, their bodies glistening under the warped light of the dying sun. Their movements were eerily fluid, almost too fast for creatures so heavily armored, and they were everywhere. "They do not hesitate," Ch13 explained. "They do not fear. They do not bargain." The streets transformed into a battleground in an instant. Soldiers scrambled to organize a response, but bullets bounced harmlessly off the droids' energy shields. Police officers, already struggling with their failing radios, fired their weapons, only to watch in horror as the droids advanced without pause. The first human casualties fell within seconds. Mark swallowed hard as he watched a group of civilians sprint toward an alley, only for a droid to calculate their movements with terrifying efficiency. A single pulse blast from its arm sent the brick wall beside them shattering, sending debris flying in all directions. The people collapsed, some unconscious, others scrambling weakly to flee. Morris grabbed Mark's shoulder. "We're not sticking around. Let's move." The two darted down a side street, dodging abandoned cars and overturned mailboxes. "We need helmets," said Mark. In an instant, tactical helmets appeared on Mark's and Morris's heads. Ch13's mind told them that the simulator could add to the simulation, reasonable and factual items that could be used by the resistance. "How do we fight something immune to everything we throw at it?" Mark panted. "You don't," Morris said, his voice tight. "Not yet. We need to figure out what will work before we make a move." Mark nodded, his heart pounding. But before they could reach a safe exit, the next horror arrived. It started with a deep guttural growl, low and rumbling, vibrating the ground beneath their feet. Then the first creatures emerged. They spilled into the streets, clawing their way out of reinforced containers that had been dropped from the sky, their eyes glowing with an eerie intelligence twisted by the neural implants the Greys had embedded in their brains. Mark skidded to a stop. Some creatures were small, barely larger than house cats, but they moved like lightning, their legs twitching unnaturally as they scanned for human targets. Others were enormous, monstrous things, with armored hides and crushing jaws, ripping through vehicles as if they were paper. "These things are programmed to hate us?" Morris muttered in disbelief. Ch2 responded coolly. "They are engineered for aggression. Once released, their instinct is destruction." Mark took a slow step back, carefully watching one of the smaller creatures as it cocked its head toward a fallen civilian. The woman screamed, scrambling backward, but it was too late. In a blur, the creature leapt, too fast, too vicious. Mark shut his eyes, trying to block out the sound. "This is worse than the droids," he muttered. "The droids eliminate resistance. All defense forces have been eliminated," Ch1 explained. "The beasts eliminate survivors. They will enter any place the droids can't." As if to punctuate the nightmare, the sky darkened once more. Not from EMP blasts or war droids, but from the descending fleets of grey warriors. They arrived as though they were stepping onto their own land, calm, assured, indifferent to the chaos around them. The battle suits they wore shimmered under the moonlight, their black eyes scanning the ruins with cold amusement. These weren't soldiers, these were claimants. Each Grey had already been assigned territory, the ruined city, the shattered homes, the fallen people. All of it was theirs now. Some humans tried to fight. A man lunged forward with a metal pipe, swinging wildly. The Grey watching him barely moved before twisting its wrist and sending a small electric charge through the man's body. He collapsed instantly, convulsing on the ground. "They don't just defeat resistance," Mark murmured, watching the scene unfold. "They humiliate it." Morris clenched his fists. "They want to break us before they take us." Ch3's voice was quiet now. "Do you understand, Mark?" Mark exhaled. He did. He felt it. Unlike the droids or the beasts, the Greys arrived with arrogance. They stepped onto the ruined streets clad in shimmering battlesuits, their black eyes scanning the destruction with detached amusement. They weren't fighting. They were claiming. "Look at them," Morris spat. "They think they own the place already." Mark exhaled, steadying his mind. "This is the real enemy." Ch3's voice came in softer, more knowing. "Do you understand now, Mark? Leadership is not just commanding battles. It is knowing what fights to pick." Mark clenched his fists. Yeah, and we're going to pick the right ones. Leadership wasn't just about commanding battles. It was about knowing what fights to pick, when to attack, when to retreat, when to outsmart an enemy that had been conquering civilizations for centuries. And most importantly, how to prevent humanity from becoming another nameless victim in the Grey's endless march of conquest. The simulation began to fade. Mark jolted awake, gasping, his heart pounding in his chest. He could still hear the distant echoes of war, the screams, the suffocating silence that followed. Morris stumbled back, inhaling deeply. Holy! He didn't finish his sentence. The Silvers stood before them, watching intently. You have seen, Silver One said. Mark clenched his fists. Felt is more like it. You now understand the enemy, Silver Two continued, and the mistakes civilizations before you have made, said Silver One. Of course, the real invasion will last several days, not 2 hours. This first simulation was meant for you to get used to it and to start getting familiarized with information and the enemy. Morris rubbed his face, shaking his head. Well, the good news is, I think we can win. Mark turned to him, surprised. You think that? Morris grinned despite everything. Yeah, because we're smarter than they think. I'm not saying we are smarter than them. I'm saying we are smarter than they think. They underestimate us. Mark nodded, his adrenaline still surging. Then let's get to work. The Silvers watched them carefully, knowing that the battle, the real battle, had only just begun. Mark sat on the cold metal floor of the Silvers' command center, his mind still reeling from the simulation they had just endured. The weight of what they had witnessed, what the Greys had done to countless civilizations, settled heavily on his shoulders. He felt like he had just lived through the apocalypse and barely walked out alive. Morris stood nearby, silent, arms crossed, staring at the alien technology around them as if willing it to reveal its secrets. This is what would happen if the invasion was to happen today, said Silver Two. Then Silver One spoke, its voice carrying an urgency that hadn't been there before. You now understand the scale of destruction, it said. But our trial for humanity demands more than survival. It demands strategy. And to ensure success, we will distort time around Earth just to give you more time. Mark frowned. Distort time? Silver Two stepped forward, its translucent fingers gliding over its holographic interface. A containment field will be placed around Earth. Time within the field will slow dramatically. What occurs in months on your planet will be mere days outside. This will allow you additional preparation. Morris exhaled, shaking his head. You're telling me you can just slow time? Like actual time? Silver Three's voice remained calm. No species has achieved time travel, but slowing relative perception, this is possible. Mark leaned forward. How much time do we get? 30 years for you, Silver Two replied. Only 6 months for the Greys. Morris let out a low whistle. That's huge. If they find out we're resisting, their reinforcements would take longer to arrive. We could actually get ahead for once. But Mark wasn't celebrating just yet. What happens if this fails? Silver One paused. Failure means uncontrolled acceleration of time. Earth could move forward centuries in the span of days. Civilizations collapse under their own weight. Infrastructure decays. Humans age before their time. Morris muttered under his breath. Great. So either we win the prep war, or the planet turns into a dystopian time accident. Mark rubbed his temples, thinking fast. How stable is this containment field? Has it been tested before? It is theoretical, Silver Three admitted. A fusion of multiple civilizations' technologies. We believe it will work, but there is no precedent. Mark let out a dry laugh. So, no pressure. Morris, despite the seriousness of the situation, smirked. Oh yeah, totally normal alien science experiment. Just casually bending time and hoping Earth doesn't turn into an elderly wasteland. Silver Two ignored the sarcasm. Your resistance requires time. Without it, your people will fall. Morris stood up, pacing. And what about unforeseen consequences? How will this affect humans mentally, If time slows inside the field, will our minds adjust? Or will we be stuck in a slow-motion nightmare? The human mind adapts to perception, Silver One responded. You will not feel the distortion. But outside forces may. This includes space operations, satellites, and the perception of interstellar visitors. Morris pointed at Mark. Translation: Earth is about to look really weird from the outside. Mark exhaled. So we prepare. We keep this secret for now, and we assume that if it fails, we lose everything. Silver 3 inclined its head. Your understanding is correct. Morris rubbed his jaw, his mind already moving. All right. If we're going through with this, we need contingencies. If time does spiral out of control, we need a way to restabilize it before things go nuclear. We can't risk a civilization-wide time skip. Mark nodded. And we need teams monitoring global changes, people who can spot irregularities before they become full-blown disasters. This isn't just resistance planning now, it's planetary survival. Silver One regarded them carefully. You see the gravity of this choice. Mark met its gaze. We don't have a choice. We make it work, or we lose everything. Morris sighed, glancing at Mark with a hint of amusement. And here I thought high school politics were complicated. Mark shook his head, exhaling slowly. Yeah. Turns out stopping an alien invasion requires a little more strategy than dealing with a school bully. As the Silvers initiated the first phases of the time distortion, Mark felt the weight of their mission settle even deeper into his bones. They had 5 months left, but only if time itself didn't betray them first. And that was the greatest gamble of all.